The Galactic Academy's training halls echoed with the sounds of clashing metal and heavy breathing. Commander Zethkar of the Vortanian Empire wiped the sweat from his scaled brow as he surveyed the new batch of recruits. Most were the usual suspects, Altarians with their forearms giving them natural advantages in dual-weapon combat, crystalline beings whose hard exteriors made them nearly impervious to blunt force, and a few gaseous entities who could phase through attacks entirely. But there, sitting alone on a bench in the corner, was something that made his mandibles click in amusement. A human. A small, pale creature with stringy brown hair tied back in what the databases called a ponytail. She couldn't be more than 5.5 feet tall, with thin limbs that looked like they'd snap under the weight of standard combat armor. "You there?" Zethkar called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 12-star systems. "Human, what's your designation?" The creature looked up with startlingly bright green eyes. "Sarah Chen, sir, reporting for advanced combat training." Several of the alien recruits turned to stare, their various forms of laughter filling the air. A massive Gorvanian, standing nearly 8 feet tall with muscles that could crush steel, let out a rumbling chuckle that shook the floor panels. "Advanced combat training," Zethkar's translator conveyed his incredulous tone perfectly. "Little fleshbag, are you certain you're in the right facility? The agricultural division is 3 sectors over." Sarah stood up slowly, her movements fluid and controlled. "I'm exactly where I need to be, Commander." The confidence in her voice was startling. Zethkar had seen this before young recruits from newly discovered species who had no idea what they were up against in the galaxy. Humans had only been part of the Galactic Federation for 2 standard years, and their planet was laughably peaceful compared to the death worlds that produced real warriors. Very well, Zethkar decided this would be an excellent teaching moment for the other recruits. "Since you're so eager, you'll be my demonstration partner. Everyone, gather around. Today we'll learn about knowing your limitations." The training circle formed quickly, with the various alien species creating a wide perimeter. Zethkar selected 2 practice swords from the weapons rack, traditional Vortanian blades that were slightly dulled for training, but still capable of delivering painful lessons to overconfident recruits. "These weapons," he announced to the crowd, "are forged from quantum-stabilized metalloid. They can withstand the striking force of a Gorvanian berserker." He gestured toward the 8-foot giant who nodded proudly. "They've been tested against crystalline warriors and have never failed." Sarah stepped into the circle, and Zethkar was struck by how small she looked surrounded by the towering aliens. Her hand extended toward the practice sword, and he almost wanted to warn her about the weight. The weapons were designed for species with far greater physical capabilities than humans possessed. "The lesson here," Zethkar continued his lecture while Sarah examined the blade, "is that the galaxy is filled with beings far stronger, faster, and more resilient than you might expect. A wise warrior learns to recognize when they're outmatched." He raised his own practice sword, the familiar weight comforting in his scaled grip. "Now, human, show us what your species considers combat prowess." What happened next would be discussed in academy halls for decades to come. Sarah didn't take a traditional stance. Instead, she held the sword loosely, almost casually, like she was holding a stick she'd found on the ground. Her breathing remained steady, her expression calm. If Zethkar didn't know better, he'd think she was bored. "Whenever you're ready, Commander," she said quietly. Zethkar decided to make this quick and relatively painless. He stepped forward with a basic overhead strike, simple, telegraphed, easy for a beginner to see coming and attempt to block or dodge. It was the kind of attack used to test reflexes and basic defensive instincts. Sarah moved. It wasn't the clumsy, scrambling Zethkar expected. Her left hand came up to meet his descending blade, not with her own sword, but with her bare palm pressed against the flat of his weapon. The impact should have driven her to her knees. Instead, his sword stopped completely, as if he'd struck a mountain. But that wasn't the part that would haunt his dreams. With her right hand, she squeezed the practice sword she'd been given. Not swung it, not used it as a weapon, just squeezed. The quantum-stabilized metalloid that had withstood the fury of berserkers and crystalline warriors let out a sound like breaking glass. Then it snapped. Not bent, not cracked. Snapped clean in half, the pieces falling to the floor with metallic clangs that seemed impossibly loud in the suddenly silent training hall. Sarah looked down at the broken weapon in her hand with what appeared to be mild disappointment. I'm sorry about that. I thought it would be stronger. Zethkar stood frozen, his own sword still pressed uselessly against her palm. Around the circle, dozens of the galaxy's most fearsome warrior species stared in absolute silence. The massive Gorvanian's mouth hung open, revealing rows of predator teeth. A crystalline being's normally steady light pattern flickered erratically. How? Zethkar's voice came out as barely a whisper. Sarah released his blade and stepped back, brushing metal fragments off her hands. Oh, you wanted me to go easy on the equipment? I can do that next time. The human turned toward the weapons rack, apparently intent on selecting another practice sword. Should we continue with the lesson, Commander? I think I understand the part about knowing limitations. Zethkar's hand was shaking as he lowered his weapon. In 30 years of military service, he had never, not once, encountered a being capable of snapping quantum-stabilized metalloid with bare hands. The metallurgical reports alone would take weeks to process. But as he watched this small, unassuming human casually examine another practice weapon, one terrible thought began to form in his mind. If this was what humans could do without even trying, what exactly had the Galactic Federation invited into their midst? The Academy's emergency medical bay had never been so quiet. Dr. Helix, a renowned Altarian physician with 4 specialized medical arms, ran her scanners over the broken practice sword for the 7th time. Each scan produced the same impossible results. The molecular bonds weren't cut, she muttered, her primary arms manipulating the scanning equipment while her secondary arms took notes. They were compressed beyond their breaking point. The force required to do this. She paused, running calculations through her neural implants. It would take a gravitational compressor to achieve this level of structural failure. Commander Zethkar paced behind her, his scaled feet clicking against the metal floor. Are you certain? Perhaps the weapon was already damaged. Commander, I've examined this metalloid composition for 15 years. These practice swords undergo quantum-level stress testing. They're rated to withstand impacts of up to 50,000 psi without deformation. Dr. Helix held up the 2 pieces of the broken sword. The human's grip strength compressed the material beyond its elastic limit in multiple points simultaneously. She didn't just break it, she pulverized the molecular structure with her fingers. The door to the medical bay hissed open, and Admiral Corvin strode in. The Thalaxian leader's tentacled form moved with the fluid grace that had made his species legendary admirals, but today his bioluminescent patches flickered with obvious agitation. I've received reports of an incident during training, Admiral Corvin's mental voice projected directly into their minds. Something about a human recruit displaying impossible physical capabilities. Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. Sir, I believe we may have encountered our first example of why human space was classified as a avoid unless necessary zone by the Galactic Survey teams. Explain. Dr. Helix stepped forward, her medical readings displayed on a holographic projection. Admiral, I've been reviewing the initial contact reports from human space. The survey teams classified their homeworld as Death World Category 7, but assumed it was due to environmental factors, predators, weather patterns, geological instability. She manipulated the display, showing images of Earth. What they failed to consider was that a Category 7 death world doesn't just produce creatures adapted to survive extreme conditions. It produces creatures adapted to dominate them. Admiral Corvin's tentacles curled thoughtfully. You're suggesting this is normal for their species? I'm suggesting, Dr. Helix continued, that what we just witnessed might be the human equivalent of our recruits demonstrating basic motor skills. Commander Zethkar, you mentioned the human seemed surprised that the weapon broke. She apologized, Zethkar confirmed. Said she thought it would be stronger, like she'd accidentally stepped on something fragile. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Admiral Corvin's bioluminescent patches shifted to patterns indicating deep concern. Meanwhile, 3 levels below in the Academy's archives, Sarah Chen sat at a research terminal, seemingly oblivious to the panic she'd caused above. The holographic interface displayed information about galactic combat techniques, weapon specifications, and military protocols. Interesting, she murmured, reading about Vortanian sword techniques. They rely heavily on the durability of their weapons for defensive applications. No wonder Commander Zethkar was confused when his practice sword stopped my attack. She scrolled through more data, her green eyes reflecting the blue light of the display. The information painted a picture of a galaxy where combat was highly ritualized, dependent on advanced technology, and focused on leveraging each species' natural advantages. Sarah Chen, a voice behind her, made her turn. A tall, elegant being with crystalline features and skin that seemed to refract light approached her table. The creature's name tag identified her as Lieutenant Quira of the Luminate Collective. "I witnessed your demonstration today," Quira said, her voice having a musical quality that came from sound waves resonating through her crystal structure. "I wanted to understand, is this normal for your species?" Sarah gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Please sit, and to answer your question, that depends on what you mean by normal." Quira's crystalline form settled gracefully into the chair. "Among my people, our combat abilities come from our natural structure. We're difficult to damage with conventional weapons, but our offensive capabilities are limited. Each species in the galaxy has clear strengths and weaknesses." "And you're wondering what humans' limitations are," Sarah nodded. "I can see how that would be confusing." She turned the holographic display so Quira could see it. "I've been reading about galactic military doctrine. It's fascinating how much emphasis there is on matching opponents to their natural abilities. Gaseous beings fight other ethereal species. Heavy gravity world creatures battle each other. Aquatic species have underwater combat protocols. Yes, it maintains tactical balance. No species has an overwhelming advantage in all scenarios." Sarah was quiet for a moment, her fingers drumming softly on the table. "Lieutenant Quira, what do you know about Earth's evolutionary history?" "Only what's in the contact reports. High gravity, predator species, geological instability." "Those are just the environmental factors," Sarah said. "Earth's evolution was shaped by something most worlds in the galaxy never experienced: constant, unrelenting competition at every level. Not just between species, but within species." She pulled up a new display showing Earth's biological history. "For millions of years, everything on our planet was both predator and prey. Nothing was safe, nothing was guaranteed survival. The only constant was adaptation or extinction." Quira's light patterns shifted to indicate fascination. "But surely your species specialized, found an ecological niche." Sarah smiled, and for the first time Quira noticed something predatory in that expression. "Our niche was being better at everything than everything else. We outclimbed the climbing species, outswam the swimming species, outran the running species. We learned to hunt pack predators and defend against ambush predators. We developed tools because our natural weapons weren't enough, then developed better tools because other species adapted to our tools." The crystalline being's form seemed to dim slightly. "You're saying humans are apex generalists?" "I'm saying that what you saw today, me breaking that sword, that wasn't a display of human combat prowess, Lieutenant. That was me being very, very careful not to hurt anyone." Quira's musical voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "How much stronger are you than what we witnessed?" Sarah's green eyes met Quira's crystalline gaze directly. "Strong enough that I'm not allowed to demonstrate it without specific authorization from Earth Command." The silence that followed was filled with the quiet hum of the archive's environmental systems. Finally, Quira spoke again. "Sarah, are there others like you in the Academy?" "Others?" Sarah looked genuinely puzzled. "Lieutenant, I'm not special among humans. I'm actually considered pretty average back home. The really strong ones are still on Earth because the Federation felt it would be diplomatically prudent to start with baseline human representatives." Quira's form flickered as her crystalline structure processed this information. Baseline. The Galactic Contact Committee requested that Earth send typical examples of human capability for initial integration. Sarah's smile returned, and this time it was almost apologetic. "I volunteered because I thought it would be interesting to see how other species approach combat training." Above them, Admiral Corvin was receiving an urgent message from Earth Command. Below them, the foundation of galactic military doctrine was quietly crumbling as one small human woman continued her research, completely unaware that 3 star systems had just been placed on high alert. The emergency session of the Galactic Military Council convened at 300 station time, with representatives from 12 major species attending via quantum communication. Admiral Corvin's bioluminescent patches cycled through stress patterns as he addressed the assembled leaders. Fellow commanders, we have a situation that requires immediate attention. His mental voice carried undertones of barely controlled anxiety. Our initial assessment of human capabilities was significantly incomplete. General Thax of the Gorvanian heavy infantry materialized as a hologram, his massive form barely contained within the projection field. Admiral, my species has held the position of primary ground assault forces for 3 centuries. Are you suggesting a single human recruit poses a threat to galactic military balance? I'm suggesting, Admiral Corvin replied, that we may have been thinking about this entirely wrong. The holographic display activated, showing footage from the training hall incident. The assembled military leaders watched in silence as Sarah Chen effortlessly snapped the practice sword. Metallurgical analysis confirms the impossible. Dr. Helix's 4 arms gestured to detailed readouts. The human applied approximately 200,000 psi of pressure. No species in our records approaches even half that grip strength. Fleet Admiral Nissa of the Altarian Defense Force leaned forward, her 4 arms folding in contemplation. Perhaps this individual is enhanced, cybernetic implants, genetic modification. Negative, Dr. Helix responded. Full biological scans confirm she's completely organic. No implants, no genetic tampering, no chemical enhancement. What you're seeing is baseline human physiology. The council chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of life support systems. General Vex of the Crystalline Guard Corps spoke next, his voice resonating through harmonic frequencies. If this is baseline, what are enhanced humans capable of? Admiral Corvin's patches shifted to patterns indicating deep unease. According to her testimony, this recruit considers herself average among her species. Earth Command specifically selected what they termed diplomatic representatives, humans whose capabilities would be less likely to cause alarm. Less likely to cause alarm. General Thax's rumbling voice carried obvious incredulity. Admiral, that creature just demonstrated the ability to destroy military-grade equipment with her bare hands. Which brings us to our immediate problem, Admiral Corvin continued. We have 17 more human recruits arriving next week. The implications of that statement rippled through the council chamber like a shockwave. Meanwhile, in the Academy's advanced combat simulator, Sarah Chen stood before a massive holographic projection. Commander Zethkar watched nervously from the observation deck as she examined the virtual environment. This is your most challenging combat scenario? Sarah asked, studying the detailed jungle landscape filled with hostile alien creatures, environmental hazards, and weapon caches. It's designed for veteran soldiers, Zethkar confirmed through the intercom. The survival rate for first-time users is approximately 23%. Most recruits require multiple attempts to complete even the basic objectives. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. What's the record completion time? Sergeant Crix of the Altarian Special Forces completed it in 4 hours and 37 minutes. He's considered one of the finest tactical minds in the Academy. I see. Sarah stepped toward the simulation entry point. And the objective is to traverse the jungle, eliminate hostile forces, and retrieve the data core. Correct. You'll have access to standard equipment loadouts appropriate for jungle warfare. The simulation will adapt to your choices and present increasingly difficult challenges. Sarah paused at the threshold. Commander, should I use standard human operating procedures, or would you prefer I adapt to galactic military doctrine? Zethkar's mandibles clicked uncertainly. After the morning's incident, he wasn't sure he wanted to see human operating procedures. Perhaps start with galactic doctrine and adapt as needed. Understood. The simulation activated, and Sarah's form dissolved into the holographic jungle. Zethkar settled in to observe what he expected would be a several-hour exercise in tactical planning and careful resource management. 18 minutes later, the simulation ended. Zethkar stared at the completion screen in disbelief. The holographic jungle was gone, replaced by a green mission complete display and a timer showing 00:18:34. Computer, he said slowly, run diagnostics on simulation integrity. All systems functioning normally. Simulation completed according to programmed parameters. Show me the replay. The holographic jungle reformed around him, and Sarah's figure appeared at the starting point. She spent approximately 30 seconds examining the equipment options before selecting. Nothing. She took no weapons, Zethkar muttered. Sarah began moving through the jungle. Where Sergeant Crix had carefully planned routes around dangerous predators, Sarah simply walked through them. Literally through them. When a massive deathclaw beast, a creature that typically required coordinated fire teams to neutralize, leaped from the canopy, Sarah caught it by the throat midair and set it gently aside. Set it aside? Zethkar rewound that section. The Deathclaw beast, a virtual predator capable of tearing through armored vehicles, had been neutralized with what appeared to be a polite gesture. The human continued her casual stroll through increasingly deadly scenarios. Acid swamps that should have required protective gear didn't seem to affect her. Hostile forces armed with military-grade weaponry fired at her position, their shots apparently having no impact whatsoever. But it was the final objective that broke Zethkar's understanding entirely. The data core was located inside a fortress designed to be impregnable. The scenario required complex infiltration, electronic warfare, or massive firepower to breach the defenses. Sarah walked up to the main gate and knocked. The massive reinforced barrier, designed to withstand orbital bombardment, crumpled like paper under her knuckles. Computer, Zethkar's voice was barely functional. What was the simulated force of that impact? Calculating, impact force exceeded sensor parameters. Estimate, equivalent to direct hit from Class VII orbital bombardment weapon. Zethkar slumped in his observation chair. A Class VII orbital bombardment weapon could level a city. Sarah had achieved the same result by knocking politely. The simulation replay continued, showing Sarah's casual walk through the ruined fortress, her retrieval of the data core, and her peaceful exit through the jungle, during which several virtual alien predators appeared to be following her like curious pets. When the real Sarah emerged from the simulation chamber, she looked slightly disappointed. "Commander, I think there might be a calibration issue with your training programs." "Calibration issue," Zethkar managed. "The simulation seemed designed for much weaker species. I was trying to follow galactic doctrine like you suggested, but the challenges weren't really challenging. Should I request access to the advanced scenarios?" Zethkar looked at his console. Sarah had just completed the most difficult combat simulation in the galactic military database, in 18 minutes, without weapons, while treating it as a pleasant nature walk. "Sarah," he said carefully, "what would you consider an appropriate challenge level?" She thought for a moment, her green eyes reflecting the lights of the simulation chamber. "Well, back home, my little sister and I used to spar for fun. Maybe something around that difficulty." "Your little sister?" "She's 14, really into martial arts, much better at it than I am actually." Zethkar's mandibles began clicking involuntarily. In the span of 2 days, his understanding of galactic military hierarchy had been completely shattered by a human woman who considered herself less capable than her teenage sister. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, a terrifying question was forming. If this was what humans called average, and if this particular human had a more combat-capable younger sister, what exactly was the upper limit of human military potential? As if reading his thoughts, Sarah smiled cheerfully. "Don't worry, Commander. I'm sure we'll figure out appropriate training parameters. After all, I'm here to learn from the galaxy's best military traditions." The fact that she seemed genuinely enthusiastic about learning from species she could apparently defeat with one hand somehow made the situation even more unsettling. // The encrypted message from Earth Command arrived at 600 station time, carrying a priority level that Admiral Corvin had never seen before. The quantum-sealed communication required 3 different command codes just to open, and what he found inside made his bioluminescent patches cycle through every stress pattern in the Thalaxian emotional spectrum. To Admiral Corvin, Galactic Military Academy **. From General Harrison, Earth Command **. Classification, Cosmic Secret **. Admiral, we understand you've had some concerns about Recruit Chen's performance during training exercises. Please be advised that all human participants in the Academy Exchange Program have been specifically selected for their restraint and diplomatic temperament. Chen, Sarah M. is classified as Standard Infantry, Baseline Human, with psychological evaluations indicating exceptional patience and conflict avoidance tendencies. She has been briefed on galactic durability limitations and instructed to exercise maximum caution during all interactions. We felt it important to address any concerns before the arrival of additional human personnel. Respectfully, General Harrison, Earth Defense Command. P.S. Please ensure all training equipment is clearly marked with maximum safe operational parameters. We want to avoid any unfortunate incidents. Admiral Corvin read the message 3 times before the full implications settled in. Sarah Chen, the human who had casually destroyed military-grade equipment and completed impossible combat simulations, was selected specifically for her restraint. His communication console chimed with an incoming priority message from Dr. Helix. Admiral, we have a situation in Medical Bay 7. You need to see this immediately. 20 minutes later, Admiral Corvin stood in the medical bay staring at something that challenged his understanding of biology. On the examination table lay the shattered remains of a standard medical scanner, not the delicate handheld units, but the massive diagnostic array designed to withstand the electromagnetic fields generated by crystalline beings. "What happened here?" he asked. Dr. Helix's 4 arms gestured helplessly. "I was conducting routine health assessments on the human recruits who arrived this morning. Standard procedure baseline scans, species-specific nutritional requirements, environmental needs. And, Admiral, the scanner overloaded trying to penetrate human skin." Admiral Corvin's tentacles curled in confusion. "I don't understand." "Neither do I," Dr. Helix admitted. "Human skin appears to have a density approaching that of reinforced battle armor. The scanner's penetration beam, which is designed to examine the internal structure of beings with metallic exoskeletons, couldn't breach the surface layers." She activated a holographic display showing the scan data. "What you're looking at are the readings from Recruit Johnson, Marcus, one of the new arrivals. The scanner registered his skin composition as unknown material possible artificial armor plating." Admiral Corvin studied the readouts. "Could it be some form of subdermal enhancement?" "No, sir. This appears to be natural human biology. When I asked Recruit Johnson about it, he seemed confused by the question. According to him, all humans have similar skin density." "All of them?" "I've now examined 6 of the new human arrivals. Same results with each. The scanner couldn't penetrate any of their skin layers. Admiral, these beings appear to be naturally armored to a degree that exceeds most species' combat protection." Admiral Corvin was beginning to understand why Earth Command had included that postscript about marking equipment with maximum operational parameters. In the Academy's main dining facility, Sarah Chen sat with several of the newly arrived human recruits, their conversation attracting nervous glances from alien students throughout the hall. "So the training here is pretty basic?" asked Marcus Johnson, a broad-shouldered man with dark skin and an easy smile. Sarah mentioned something about adapting to galactic standards. "Very basic," confirmed Lisa Park, a petite Asian woman who somehow made even the reinforced academy chairs look fragile. "The combat simulations are designed for much weaker species. I completed the advanced tactical scenario in about 15 minutes. 15 minutes, Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That's faster than my time." "You were being polite," Lisa pointed out. "I got impatient and just removed the obstacles." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Lieutenant Quira, whose crystalline form reflected the dining hall lights nervously. "Excuse me," Quira's musical voice carried undertones of anxiety. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I had some questions about human military capabilities." "Of course," Sarah gestured to an empty chair. "This is Lieutenant Quira of the Luminate Collective. She's been helping me understand galactic military doctrine." Marcus leaned forward with interest. "That's fascinating. How do crystalline beings approach combat? Your structure must make you nearly impervious to physical attacks." "Among beings of similar capabilities, yes," Quira said carefully. "But I've been wondering, what are human military tactics like? Your homeworld reports suggest constant warfare." The 3 humans exchanged glances. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Lieutenant, I think there might be some confusion about human history. We didn't have constant warfare, we had constant everything. War was just one of many survival challenges. I don't understand the distinction. Lisa leaned back in her chair, which creaked ominously under what appeared to be minimal weight. Queera, what's the most dangerous thing on your homeworld? The resonance storms. They can shatter unprotected crystalline structures. And how often do they occur? Perhaps once every few hundred rotations. When they approach, we take shelter in the deep caverns. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. On Earth, that level of danger would be considered a minor weather event. Humans deal with dozens of potentially lethal environmental factors every day: storms, predators, disease, geological instability, temperature extremes, toxic atmospheric conditions. But surely your species adapted by avoiding these dangers. Actually, we adapted by getting better at dealing with them, Sarah explained. When faced with predators, we became better predators. When faced with environmental challenges, we learned to thrive in them. When faced with food scarcity, we learned to eat things other species couldn't. Queera's light patterns shifted to indicate confusion. But that would require your species to excel in multiple areas simultaneously. Right, Lisa said. That's exactly what happened. We didn't specialize like most species do. We generalized, but we generalized upward. Upward. Marcus gestured around the dining hall. Every species here has a clear advantage in one area. Gorvarians are strong, Altarians are dexterous, crystalline beings are durable. But each also has clear limitations. Humans don't have a single overwhelming advantage. Instead, Sarah continued, we have moderate advantages in everything. We're stronger than most species, faster than most species, more durable than most species, more adaptable than most species. But not overwhelmingly superior in any single area, Lisa added. Except, Queera prompted. The three humans looked at each other again. Finally, Marcus spoke. Except that moderate advantages in everything, when combined, create exponential rather than additive effects. A species that's 20% stronger, 20% faster, 20% more durable, and 20% more adaptable than the galactic average isn't just 80% more capable. They're orders of magnitude more capable, Sarah finished, because those advantages multiply rather than add. Queera's crystalline form had gone completely still. Orders of magnitude. Lieutenant, Lisa said gently, when Sarah broke that practice sword yesterday, she was being extraordinarily careful. The quantum-stabilized metalloid you use for weapons. On Earth, we'd consider that approximately equivalent to thick cardboard. The silence that followed was filled only by the ambient noise of the dining facility. Around them, conversations at other tables had gradually stopped as alien students strained to overhear the humans' discussion. How much stronger are you than what we've observed? Queera's voice was barely audible. Sarah considered the question carefully. That's difficult to answer because we've been instructed to avoid any demonstrations that might cause diplomatic incidents. But approximately, Marcus spoke up. Let me put it this way, the combat simulations you consider impossibly difficult. Back home, we'd use those as relaxation exercises. When humans want actual combat training, we fight each other. And even then, Lisa added, we have to be extremely careful not to cause permanent damage. Queera's form flickered as her internal lighting systems struggled to process this information. You mean the most advanced military training in the galaxy is what humans consider recreational activity? Not exactly recreational, Sarah corrected. More like gentle warm-up exercises. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the Academy's communication system. Attention all personnel. This is Admiral Corvin. All training exercises involving human recruits are hereby suspended pending review of safety protocols. The three humans looked puzzled. I wonder what that's about, Marcus mused. Around them, every alien in the dining facility was staring at their table with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Queera's crystalline voice carried a note of something approaching reverence. I think they're beginning to understand what humanity represents. What do you mean? Sarah asked. For the first time in galactic history, Queera said quietly, we've encountered a species that doesn't just dominate their environment. You've encountered a species that dominates the concept of domination itself. The implications of that statement would keep xenobiologists busy for decades. 3 months after what Academy historians would later call the Awakening. The Galactic Military Council convened for its most important session in recorded history. The emergency protocols had been activated, and representatives from every member species attended either in person or through quantum projection. Admiral Corvin's bioluminescent patches had developed a permanent stress pattern that Dr. Helix privately worried might be medically significant. As he addressed the assembly, his mental voice carried the weight of someone who had watched the foundations of galactic civilization shift beneath his feet. Fellow commanders, we gather today to address the complete restructuring of our understanding of military capability and interspecies relations. The holographic display activated, showing comparative data that had taken teams of xenobiologists 3 months to compile. Human beings, Admiral Corvin continued, represent a paradigm that we simply had no framework to comprehend. Every species in our database evolved advantages in specific areas while accepting limitations in others. Humans appear to have evolved advantages in every measurable category. General Thax of the Gorvanian Heavy Infantry materialized as a hologram, his massive form somehow seeming diminished. Admiral, my species has served as the Federation's primary ground assault force for 3 centuries. Our strength advantage over other species has been documented at 300 to 500% above galactic average. And compared to humans, prompted Fleet Admiral Nissa, humans are approximately 1,200% stronger than Gorvarians. We performed controlled tests. General Thax's voice carried the tone of someone whose worldview had been systematically demolished. Recruit Johnson lifted a tactical vehicle over his head to help a maintenance team access its undercarriage. He thought he was being helpful. General Vex of the Crystalline Guard Corps spoke next. Similar results in durability testing. Crystalline beings have served as defensive specialists due to our natural resistance to damage. Human skin appears to provide better protection than our specialized crystal matrix. The psychological evaluations are perhaps most concerning, added Dr. Helix, her 4 arms manipulating multiple data streams simultaneously. Humans don't appear to recognize their capabilities as exceptional. They consistently rate themselves as normal or average on capability assessments. Admiral Corvin's patches shifted to patterns indicating deep unease. This brings us to today's primary agenda item. Last week, Earth Command forwarded a request that has significant implications. The assembled military leaders waited in tense silence. Humanity has requested permission to establish a joint training facility where human instructors could teach galactic forces what they term basic survival skills. The reaction was immediate and varied. Several gaseous representatives phased partially out of existence in shock. The Altarian delegation's 4 arms began gesticulating frantically. General Thax's hologram flickered as his communication systems struggled with what appeared to be cognitive overload. They want to teach us, General Vex's harmonic voice cracked slightly. According to their proposal, humans believe they can help other species reach their full potential through what they describe as gentle conditioning exercises. Fleet Admiral Nissa leaned forward. What sort of exercises? Admiral Corvin manipulated the holographic display, showing a training program outline that Earth Command had provided. Basic obstacle navigation, elementary strength training, introductory tactical awareness, and something they call playground-level combat scenarios. Playground level? Dr. Helix queried. Human children's recreational activities, Admiral Corvin explained. The proposal notes that these exercises would be significantly scaled down to accommodate non-human physiology. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans were offering to teach galactic military forces using training methods designed for their juveniles, and they felt the need to scale it down for safety reasons. Meanwhile, in the Academy's newly constructed human relations facility, Sarah Chen sat across from a delegation of species representatives who had requested a cultural exchange session. The meeting room had been specially reinforced after an incident where Sarah had accidentally put her hand through a standard table during an enthusiastic explanation. Please understand, Sarah was saying to the assembled group, humans genuinely want to contribute to galactic civilization. We're not trying to be intimidating. Lieutenant Quira, who had become something of an unofficial liaison between humans and other species, translated the nervous chittering from an insectoid representative. Engineer Zix wants to know if humans have any technological advantages that match your physical capabilities. Sarah looked puzzled. Technological advantages? Not really. Most of our technology is pretty primitive compared to galactic standards. She activated a portable device that looked like a simple tablet. This is one of our more advanced pieces of equipment, a standard Earth military communication array. The device projected a holographic interface that made the Academy's quantum computers look like children's toys. Primitive, squeaked Engineer Zix through his translator. Oh yes, this model is nearly 6 months old. Most humans carry much more advanced personal electronics. Sarah gestured casually at what appeared to be an impossibly complex quantum processing system. The newer versions have better battery life. Dr. Helix, who had been quietly scanning the device, spoke up with barely controlled excitement. Sarah, this communication array appears to be processing information at rates that exceed our theoretical maximums for quantum computing. Really? Sarah examined her tablet with new interest. I guess Earth technology developed differently than galactic standard. We needed portable devices that could function in extremely harsh environments, so our electronics had to be really robust. How harsh? Asked Quira. Well, this tablet is rated for operation in direct nuclear explosions, underwater at crushing depths, in hard vacuum, and during electromagnetic pulse events. Standard military equipment needs to work anywhere a human might need to use it. The assembled delegates exchanged glances that conveyed a universal sentiment of growing alarm. Sarah, Lieutenant Quira said carefully, when you say anywhere a human might need to use it. Any environment where humans operate, Sarah confirmed. Deep ocean, Arctic conditions, desert extremes, radioactive zones, low gravity, high gravity, toxic atmospheres, places with minimal oxygen, areas with extreme electromagnetic interference. Those are considered uninhabitable death zones by most species, Dr. Helix pointed out. Sarah looked genuinely surprised. Really? But humans live and work in all those environments routinely. How do other species handle environmental diversity? They don't, Quira explained. Most species require very specific environmental conditions to survive. What you're describing as routine human habitats would be classified as extreme hazard zones requiring specialized equipment and extensive safety protocols. Sarah pondered this information. That explains why the Academy environmental systems are so limited. I thought they were just set to a comfortable baseline. Engineer Zix's translator conveyed frantic chittering. Quira translated. He wants to know what humans consider an uncomfortable environment. Sarah thought for a moment. I guess places where you'd need life support equipment, like the surface of gas giants, or inside stellar coronas, or in the void between galaxies. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Engineer Zix fainting and hitting the reinforced floor with a metallic clang. Is he okay? Sarah asked, moving to help. Please don't touch him, Dr. Helix said quickly. Your assistance might accidentally cause more damage than his fall. Back in the council chamber, Admiral Corvin was presenting the final piece of information that would reshape galactic civilization. Earth Command has also forwarded what they term a cultural context document to help us understand human perspectives on interspecies cooperation. The document appeared on the holographic display, and Admiral Corvin began reading key excerpts. Quote, humans view the galactic community as an extended family requiring protection and guidance. We believe all species have the potential to exceed their current limitations with proper support. End quote. He continued to the next section. Quote, Earth looks forward to peaceful cooperation with galactic neighbors and hopes to share the benefits of human adaptability with species who may have been limited by evolutionary specialization. End quote. Fleet Admiral Nissa's four arms moved in patterns indicating deep contemplation. They see us as children requiring protection. It appears so, but the document also includes this statement. Admiral Corvin highlighted another passage. Quote, human military policy regarding galactic species is limited to defensive protocols only. Offensive capabilities are reserved exclusively for external threats to the galactic community. End quote. General Vex's harmonic voice carried new undertones of realization. They're offering to serve as protectors of galactic civilization. The question, Admiral Corvin said gravely, is whether we have any choice but to accept. As the Council session continued, a new message arrived from Earth Command with a priority level even higher than the previous communications. Admiral Corvin opened it with tentacles that had developed a permanent tremor. To Galactic Military Council **. From General Harrison, Earth Command **. Subject, External Threat Assessment. Distinguished colleagues, our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in the Andromeda approach vectors. Initial analysis suggests possible hostile intent from entities unknown to current galactic databases. Preliminary scout reports indicate technological capabilities significantly exceeding known galactic standards. Estimated threat level, extinction class. Earth stands ready to provide defensive support to all member species. Human fleet elements are already moving to intercept positions. We will protect our galactic family. General Harrison, Earth Defense Command. Admiral Corvin read the message aloud to the stunned council. The implications were staggering. Humanity had already classified the entire galactic community as something worth protecting, and they possessed monitoring and response capabilities that exceeded anything in the Federation database. But it was the final line that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We will protect our galactic family. Humanity hadn't joined galactic civilization to learn from more advanced species. They had joined to adopt a collection of younger siblings who needed someone to watch over them. The universe had just become a much safer place, assuming you were on the right side of humanity's protective instincts. As the Council session concluded with plans for complete restructuring of galactic military doctrine, Sarah Chen was in the Academy cafeteria, happily sharing her lunch with a group of alien students who had overcome their initial terror enough to appreciate her genuinely friendly nature. Tomorrow we're starting basic self-defense classes, she announced cheerfully to her mixed-species lunch companions. Earth Command sent us some training equipment that should work better with galactic physiology. Lieutenant Quira, who had become something of a regular at these informal gatherings, asked, "What kind of training equipment?" "Oh, just some standard stuff. Practice weapons made from soap foam, protective padding designed for infants, that sort of thing. We want to make sure everyone stays safe while learning." The fact that humanity's idea of training equipment suitable for galactic physiology consisted of items designed for their own bobbies somehow perfectly encapsulated the new reality of human-galactic relations. The galaxy had gained the most powerful protectors in known history. And those protectors genuinely, enthusiastically wanted to teach everyone else how to stay safe.